Okay, this should be, did people get the notification we're starting the recording?
Not yet, but soon.
Okay. All right, I'm seeing it
Um,
now. All right, we're good.
okay. All right,
Okay.
welcome debate. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Welcome debaters. My name is Josh Nixon, like the president of relation. I will be representing the affirmative in this case. I will have 3 minutes to talk about a problem, a harm, why the problem is bad, and the solvency, which is what our plan does to actually solve the problems. A quick point of order, though, with our short speech times. A lot of us are going to read through like maybe a paragraph or two of their card and explain it, but there is much more information for you to read and to actually use in the debate round. So don't think that just because we only read like a paragraph or two that that's what we're asking. It's just for brevity's sake, and this is an instructional debate for you. So 3, 2, 1. All right. 1AC, the first inherency, which is what is going on right now, the status quo, a problem that exists in the world right now that isn't going to be solved unless the affirmative does something. Although the COVID-19 vaccine was developed quickly, drug development in general has slowed and continues to get more expensive. Margolis 24. When the FDA issued emergency authorization use for the first COVID-19 vaccine in December 2020, it marked just 10 months since the Secretary of Defense of Health and Human Services officially declared a public health emergency. Compared to the traditional vaccine creation process, approximately 4 years, count them, 4 years, got chopped off of the development time, which is huge because imagine if we weren't able to respond to COVID for another 4 years. So that's what's going on right now in the pharma space. A harm because of that, even though again I'm stating that COVID-19 was developed quickly, we're stating that many other drugs are not being developed quickly. And because many other drugs are not being developed quickly, specifically in Boston, lower income Bostonians have less access to affordable medications and insurance coverage than wealthy Bostonians. Kurt 22. Boston is a pharmaceutical hub within the United States, a place where a lot of people want to come to for pharmacies and to get into the pharmaceutical business. Um, Within the United States, with a growing number of large pharmaceutical companies all over the city, drug prices in Boston are higher compared to other cities internationally. This disparity puts lower income Bostonians at a significant disadvantage when it comes to affording prescription medicines. Now, why do prescription medicines matter? I think well, I know that quality of life matters and dignity matters, right? Like I should be able to not have to deal with chronic back pain every day because I don't have money to afford drugs, or that a few companies are able to make drugs and price me out of being able to have that. That should not be fair, especially if I'm powering the economy. And by I mean us as like the working force powering the economy. Thus, we propose the following plan. The United States federal government should create a permanent fast track process for the review and approval of patents of pharmaceutical products. 1AC solvency. Fast track approval should be available all the time, not just in emergencies. It can save lives and improve public health. And I would also add dignity too, but that's not something that any card would have in it. But part of being able to have access to any type of medicine is a dignity thing as well as um, uh, an economic or any other issue thing. Stinger 20. It takes an average of 10 years and $500 million for a vaccine to be developed and approved. While COVID-19 is highly contagious and rapidly spreads, providing a continuous pool of subjects for clinical trials, the speed at which these vaccines are coming online is still nothing short of astounding. I cut the card there and I stand over for cross-ex.
Okay, so now we need some participation on your end. Josh just read a great opening speech. Put any questions you have for Josh into the chat. And again, if you're with a whole group or individually, you can put those questions in. If you want to put them in English or Spanish, that's fine as well. Um, and I was going to do the part about polling for which questions, but that's going to just add time. So we are not going to do
Sure.
that. Um,
Get those questions in. I know y'all heard me. I'll read a couple of them out of the chat.
Ya, chicos, si tienen alguna pregunta acerca de los argumentos que leyó Josh, pues lo pueden poner en el chat.
We were think we were saying we were saying that anyways, we're next to each other, so it's a little difficult. We're saying like while they're thinking we could probably ask the first question as the students are getting, but I think we just gotta
Yeah, Tara got one. And there's
Yes.
another one. Do you want me to read those?
yeah, go ahead. We can start with those.
All right, cool. So, first question coming from the Elliot. If we develop a fact track, won't the fact hold on. What is hold on. There's like a little reaction.
Oh,
Won't that in fact reduce the incentive and gain these pharmaceutical companies make, leading to the destruction for these companies from the inside out? Um, that's a really good question, Tara. I would say that like for the big companies, it won't even put a dent in them. Like they are so locked into their position that like this is really mainly for the innovators, the folks who can solve a lot of the little problems to like get in and actually like be able to be innovative due to having that fast track process, meaning that like a lot less time in them developing these resources. That is a good question though.
and I'm gonna have Rainer and Maurice as the negative select one more question from the chat for Josh, and then you can ask it to Josh.
The one I think we're gonna pick is the last two are pretty similar. So, which is like, how do you know that fast track patents are safe?
That's a very good question. Usually, haste makes waste, and we understand that principle 100%. Very good question. But we believe, just like with the COVID vaccine, where we chopped off 4 years for the COVID vaccine development, right? That is an example of how the fast track process is safe, right? Like millions of people got the vaccine, and the spread of COVID, though is still spreading, is nowhere near as bad as it was during the pandemic times. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
All right. So again, as we go, if you want to put comments or thoughts for either team in the chat, we're always glad to hear how you're engaging with this. And this is a practice round and open for
All right.
sharing. We are going to pause at the halfway point of the debate and ask for more thoughts and feedback. But
Roger and Josh, are we also doing our own questions or no?
no, so we're just going to jump
All right.
right to the next speech. But again, as you have thoughts about the points that either team is making or questions that you want to ask, you don't have to wait for our invitation. You can put those right into the chat. So who's the first negative speaker going to be?
I am. Hello, everyone. I'm Marisa Sweska, and I work at the Boston Debate League alongside these great people. And I just want to shout you all out for being here at this Debate Academy. We are super excited to have you here and to be exploring this really meaty case. And that's my little little introduction. Just to give a little roadmap before we start the time. So as the first negative constructive, I'm going to make three arguments. The first will be a harm's alt cause, meaning proposing a different cause for the harm that the affirmative lays out than the one that that they did. And then two arguments about the solvency, actually arguing that the affirmatives plan would make the problem worse. So with that, we will
So the timer actually
begin. Oh, the timer's there.
It's gonna be visible when he puts it on.
Okay, perfect. All right. So we will begin now. Okay. My first point I want to make is that we agree with the affirmative's assertion that dignity matters, that access to healthcare matters, and that it matters both in the world and right here in Boston as well. So we have no arguments. We agree that that is a problem, but we feel that they are misdiagnosing the problem and therefore creating the wrong solution. First argument, a major cause of high cost and low access to life-saving drugs is pharmacy benefit managers' unfair business practices, which has nothing to do with patents. FTC, which is Federal Trade Commission, 2024. The six largest PBMs, which again are pharmacy benefit managers, manage nearly 95% of all prescriptions filled in the United States. This vertically integrated and concentrated market structure has allowed PBMs to profit at the expense of patients and independent pharmacists. This report finds that PBMs wield enormous power over patients' ability to access and afford their prescription drugs, allowing PBMs to significantly influence what drugs are available and at what price. And so, judges, what I want you to understand here, first of all, for PBMs, folks, this is in your glossary at the very beginning. A PBM, or pharmacy benefit manager, is a company that manages prescription drugs for health insurance plans by negotiating prices between drug companies and sellers, which is pharmacies. Basically, it's something that's supposed to be lowering costs of drugs for regular people, and in fact, it is not working. So what we want to tell you here is that the issue of fast-tracking patents is not going to solve the problem of health inequity. And in fact, the issues have to do with the market forces and the businesses that have drug companies making more money at the expense of regular people. I'm going to move on to the solvency turn. Patent abuse is the cause of unaffordable drug prices for everyday Americans. Making it easier and faster for companies to get more patents would not be good. Ammon and Mitchell, 2023. Today, 1 in 4 Americans cannot afford to take their medications as prescribed. Too many seniors are having to ration their treatments to get by until their next Social Security check arrives. And contrary to what industry lobbyists argue, soaring drug prices are not the inevitable result of research and development costs to bring breakthrough drugs to market. At the root of our nation's drug pricing crisis is the industry's egregious abuse of a broken drug patent system. Big Pharma uses the patent system not to reward invention, but to block competition and extend lucrative monopolies. So what I want to say here is that the root issue is not going to be addressed. In fact, it is going to be made worse by the affirmatives plan. Patents do not actually increase innovation and increase access, as the affirmative argues. This card and others that the affirmative plan will make the problem worse.
All right. So again, debaters who are observing, please put any questions you have about Marisa's speech or for Marisa in the chat. And again, English or Spanish is fine. We can translate them as needed. And Josh, since I'm about to speak, you can be the one to ask the questions. So if you want to pull a
Yes,
question
sir.
from the chat, that'd be great.
All right. Well, we got our first question from Mr. Miller. To the negative team, how would lowering the cost of these drugs be beneficial if these drugs cannot be produced fast enough for the public to support?
So that's a great question, Grayson. And we have evidence to show that, in fact, innovation is happening in pharmaceutical companies. So the issue of the drugs being produced fast enough is not related to patents and is not necessarily a problem. And what we also argue is that if there are patents that are fast track, it's not going to increase drugs being produced, like a lot of different drugs that a lot of people need just for illnesses. It's going to increase the large companies producing a small number of drugs, which certainly that's what happened in the pandemic, which was something that was needed, but it's not going to address the harm that the affirmative laid out about everyday Americans not having access to the drugs they need.
Yeah, I think we
Thank
have
you
time
very
for
much.
one more
Yep.
question if we get one. I do see someone typing at the moment.
Understanding. Simon, thank you for sharing that. First of all, shout out for vulnerability and naming what is so. So we definitely will come in and work with your teams as well, because this is a hard case and does take some time to get a sense of it.
There's another question that's in the chat as well.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, I got you. And the second question comes from Miss Hernan. and it's in an emergency, wouldn't the fast track system be beneficial for distributing drugs?
We certainly agree that the fast track system, which exists already, as it did in the COVID pandemic, is effective for distributing drugs in the case of a pandemic. However, what the affirmative is saying is not just an emergency, but in everyday life. The harm is that people, including right here in Boston, do not have access to the drugs they need and cannot afford the drugs they need. And that is the harm that we're trying to solve. And that's what we're debating about today.
Thank you.
All right. So we're going to just jump right into the next speech. So the next one will be the second affirmative constructive given by me. And again, I just want to draw people's attention to our free flow document. If you are following along, I'm going to put that in the chat one more time. All the arguments I'm making are going to be right from here. And again, as a general strategy for being prepared for your own debates in the future, pre-flowing is a great way to have a sense of kind of your starting point going in. And you can make decisions based on what is on the flow. And yeah, so let me go to the timer.
You can't see my pre-flow, but even while we were doing the paper stacking thing, I was working on a flow, even just like manually having one.
Perfect. Love it. All right. So I'm just gonna pull up my evidence. All right. So I'm gonna start my speech. I've got 3 minutes, and I'm gonna again I won't go too much in depth, but I'm gonna respond to the arguments that Marisa made. And for again, look, if we're looking at the pre-flow, I'm gonna make arguments on pages 9, 10, 15, and 14. All right, here we go. So, judges, I'm here to, again, extend on Josh's arguments and explain why it is important that we fast track patents. Patents are what encourage large pharmaceutical companies that make life-saving medicines to keep making those medicines and keep innovating, keep inventing things to make the world better. Okay, my first piece of evidence I'm going to read is page 9, which is post-COVID, the pharmaceutical innovation has slowed. That's from the WHO 22, the World Health Organization. And in particular, I'm just going to read the first 2 sentences. Development of new antibacterial treatments is inadequate to address the mounting threat of antibiotic resistance. Since 2017, only 12 antibiotics have been approved, 10 of which belong to existing classes with established mechanisms of antimicrobial resistance. That is a big mouthful, but what we're really trying to say is in the past 8 years, only 12 treatments have come, only 12 treatments have been approved as antibiotics, right? That's a really, really, really small amount, just 12. Okay, I'm on to page 10. Investment in vaccines is low because the costs are high and the people who need them most live in lower resource countries. So someone asked about this in the chat. This is the wherein 24 card, right? According to the BIO report, venture capital investment in companies with vaccines for infectious diseases as their lead products added up to 6.5 billion worldwide. That accounted for just 3.4 of the 190 billion raised for bio companies. In contrast, companies with oncology, that's for cancer products, as their lead candidates raised approximately 72.6 billion over the same period. And I'm going to cut the card there. So what this is saying is we might be investing in certain kinds of medicine, but we're really not well prepared to address all the different kinds of things that we need. And things like being prepared for pandemics, we're definitely not prepared for. And those pandemics are hitting lower resourced countries the most. Okay, on to my next piece of evidence, which is I'm going to just do one more piece of evidence, page 15. So the patents give drug companies a way to recover the cost of new drugs. Companies need to profit on drugs they create to research and develop new drugs. That's Barbosu 24. And according to a recent study, it costs 2.6 billion to develop a new drug. Drug development takes 10 to 15 years, and some drugs never reach the market. So cut the card there. Basically, what I'm saying here is that Drugs cost a lot of money to research and make, so giving companies patents allows them to have exclusive rights to produce technology that leads to new drugs. And with that money they make from patents, they can continue to research and produce more things. They need this money from patents to keep making more life-saving medicine. Okay. So I'm glad to take questions in the chat. And Rainer or Marisa, if you want to identify questions and ask them for me, that'd be great.
Yes, the Elliott team already has one. Thank you, Elliott team. The question is, as you probably know, there was plenty of stigma associated with COVID-19 vaccine because it came out very quickly. If companies are getting patents approved more quickly with this affirmative plan, don't you think that this would significantly increase the stigma of new vaccines, leading to lack of overall public wellness because no one is taking the vaccines?
That is a great question. I'm glad you asked it here. So the thing that I want to make very clear is that the thing that is being patented is not the new vaccine itself. What I'm encouraging patents for is things like new medical technology. The mRNA vaccine that led to COVID vaccine development, the technology in the COVID vaccine is actually 30 or 40 years old, right? This is just a new application of patented technology. So when we keep doing research with these pharmaceutical companies, they develop things over time, and patents allow them to keep making and improving things. So when an emergency does come up or a new disease appears, we can use that technology that is patented. So the patents allow companies to control this for a long period of time and encourage them to keep innovating and inventing, but the technology itself to respond to new diseases is actually not developed quickly.
Thank you. We probably have time for one more. And I think we'll go with the second question, though, Antia from Linden. Thank you for that question as well. So if these companies are so big, as you claim, as you mentioned earlier, why do these companies need the money made from patents?
Oh, that's a great question. So these companies are huge, and I acknowledge that they basically big companies have big bills, right? They spend a lot of money on research and development, hundreds of billions of dollars, as I read in one of my pieces of evidence. So in order to have that hundreds of billions of dollars to spend on research, they need to make money from their patented technology.
Thank you. I don't know if we have time for more.
I think we have to stop it there, but I will do my best
Excellent questions there at the bottom there as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll throw a couple answers into the chat to the questions that you didn't get a chance to ask.
Yeah, I could do that too.
Yeah, if you want to do that, that'd be great, Josh. All right, and so now we're going to turn it over to Rainer to give the second negative constructive.
All right. Before you start the clock, Roger. I'm just kind of thinking back again on the comment about what's all that's happening. So far, if you've been following, essentially this is gonna be the last constructive speech where it was like we're building the house, so to speak. That here, like the bones of it, and then the rebuttal is just trying to bring it all together. So far, we have the affirmative. They're pretty much done with all the constructive speech. And then the negative is trying to respond to some of the things they're doing. I will be doing some framing in my speech as well for the first minute, and hopefully that will give a better sense of where I think the debate is going, and hopefully through that explanation as well, you guys will get a better sense of like how we're thinking about the story and where the main issues are with clash. So if as you listening along, you feel like, I'm not fully grasping it, that is totally fine. That is why we're doing this partially. And then some of the things we'll be sending as well with the weekly emails sent to the coaches. The goal is to help you guys like get more understanding of this. So if you're following along right now, you're like, I still don't fully get it, that is totally fine. Do not be discouraged. Do not feel like this is not for you. It does take time. So with that being out the way, I will start. Roger, yeah, you can start the time. So I'd just like to start that by trying to frame it as like when the affirmative is debating, they have the burden they have three things they have to do. They have to establish inherency, showing that something is happening, it won't be solved. They have to show you that there's a harm, and more importantly, they have to show you that they can solve. As my partner said, we're not contesting inherency. We agree with the harm that something needs to be done because the cost of drugs are too expensive. But what we are arguing is that they are misdiagnosed it, so therefore they cannot possibly solve. And if they cannot possibly solve, they cannot win the round. Point blank, period. Right? And they also have to show you that, hey, at the end of the day, if you pass our plan, the world will be a better place. We don't think that's going to be the case. How do we know they're misdiagnosing the problem? First of all, if you read their harms card, it only talks about insurance coverage, right? This whole card, the tag is lower income Bostonians have less access to affordable medications and insurance coverage than wealthy Bostonians. They're trying to make you think that, hey, the reason for that is because drugs are not being developed fast enough. That is not the reason. If you read the actual card, it says that it's because of lack of insurance coverage. As my partner already read, the part of the reason for that is because of the pharmacy benefit managers who are hiking up the costs. So they, even if you were to pass that thing, it does not address the insurance coverage issue. It does not address the pharmacy benefit managers issue. So do not let them have that. The next thing, their main solvency card, their only solvency card from Stinger 21, that's a biased source from the Cato Institute, which they usually amplified things like lower government involvement, like fewer oversight. So we already know that this is what they're going to say. And even within that, what they're trying to get rid of is the phase 3 trial. The phase 3 trial is the one that like looks at long-term impact according to their own evidence. They want to get rid of that. Who wants to take something that has not done phase 3 trial? Even the COVID vaccine, they just had 46,000 participants who signed up. They're not even advocating for that as well. They just say, just get rid of the phase 3 trial and trust us, it's going to be safe. So that's the main thing here. And we're saying like the world is not going to be a better place. And we're also saying that they do not solve. To add to the fact that they do not solve, I'm going to read two pieces of evidence. One is the fact that, again, just because drugs are approved more quickly doesn't ensure they will work. Again, going back to the safety, that is from Lupkin 22. Doctors told Christy Akayaga that it was time to bring out the big gun to fight her teenage son's leukemia. By the time the IV bag filled with it was empty, Michael was sicker than he'd ever been in more than 6 months of cancer treatment. He walked into the hospital and, he never walked out. Again, I'm going to cut it here just because of time pressure. But this is showing you one instance of like someone receiving a drug that was developed too fast that did not work. If anything, it made them sicker. The next one is the fact that, as someone mentioned in the chat, the COVID vaccine hesitancy shows that fast tracking can reduce public trust in vaccines, especially when they are developed too quickly. That is from Darabo and Adib 20. Why is confidence in getting vaccines so low? Dr. Susan Bailey, president of American Medical Association, says development of COVID-19 vaccines has been an accelerated timeline, and it's natural for people to be suspicious of things they don't know about. So beyond that, they're asking to even do something that's even faster. So this is actually going to make the issue even worse, pertaining to the card that they read on page 10 about like lower income countries not having access to it is going to create this environment where no one trusts vaccines and resulting in fewer people actually even taking them. I rest my case. Thank you.
All right. Can we get some questions in chat, please?
Yes, please share, and we'll ask some questions for Rainer.
You read Darrow and Adib.
Sorry?
You read Darrow and Adib. You read page 20.
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the last one.
All right. I don't see any, so I'm going to ask one. And if there's one that pops up, I will certainly get to it.
Someone just wrote they have a question. So Bria, you can write it
Oh,
down.
you do have a question? No, so Bruce, I have no question. Okay, cool. Actually, Elliot got it. Do you
Yeah.
think education is important to reduce stigma around, I'm assuming around pandemics and pharmaceuticals?
Yeah, we think education is critical to reducing stigma. But what does it sound like to educate the public and tell them that one of the key phases has been completely getting rid of? Like, so the third phase, where we do ongoing monitoring to make sure that this has no long-term impact, that's been taken out of the process. I think that would actually make it harder if people actually know that this is the part that that the affirmative team is proposing getting rid of.
Okay, and then Matthias from the Linden asks,
What evidence do I have?
Yeah.
So the evidence that I have is from their own evidence, and that's on page 7, which they read, which is their only solvency card. That's Sanger 20. On there itself, it says that they are trying to get rid of the phase 3 trial. It says it on the second paragraph. On there, I can read it if you want. It says like It says under the coronavirus treatment acceleration program, the FDA grant emergency use authorization to vaccines that have already completed phase 1 trials that have demonstrated safety and phase 2 trials that demonstrated safety and efficacy, but have not yet completed phase 3 long-term protection trials if the benefits outweigh the risk. Yeah, that's evidence.
All right, thank you. Yeah, so they can go in and answer more after the neg block because that's what this is. Boop, 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 boop. We're heading into rebuttals.
Oh, you have actually get it.
Yeah.
Yes, Rainer, if you want to go ahead and to the chat and answer some of the questions that are coming in for you.
Just keep going in order. You said that some of the medication may not
Oh,
work.
sorry, I meant in the chat.
Oh, okay, sorry, okay.
No problem. And then Marisa, we're going to pause here before we jump into the rebuttal. So I'm going to ask us to change gears a tiny bit. All of the debaters, you've been asking questions in the chat so far. If you can put one thing in the chat that you think is the strongest argument you've heard so far in this debate, that would be helpful because as we go into the rebuttals, we want to amplify those strongest arguments and really make sure we make it clear to the judge what our strongest points are on both sides as we try and convince you to vote for us. So please put your strongest arguments into the chat as Marisa is preparing for her first rebuttal. Oh, I see a comment says the negative side is really strong. I would love to hear what you think makes the negative side really strong in this case. And Ms. Howard from New Mission highlighted that they think that the argument about high costs being related to businesses rather than patents is a strong argument. Let's see. Elliot, we've got a strong argument for the AF. The fast track is necessary to develop vaccines in case of global pandemics. Bria has an argument that she thinks that stands out to her. 1 in 4 Americans cannot afford the medications they need. And the Lion is saying the strongest arguments they've heard is the negative impact on lower resource countries and communities. Lyndon really liked the strong arguments in the 2NC. Lyndon, if you want to give us some details on that, we would love to hear them. And keep adding these things in the chat. Marisa, I'm going to check in with you and see if you're ready to go on the 1NR here.
Sorry. Yes, I am. Ready as I'll ever be. And debaters, this, of course, when you're in a round, taking that time before the prep time before rebuttals is really when you want to save that time. So we were using it just now, my partner and I. So thank you, debaters, coaches, for listening to this round. Just a quick roadmap for my 1NR. I am going to clarify and extend on the story that my partner already talked about, starting with acknowledging and addressing their harms and addressing differences in root causes and 2 main issues with their solvency around safety and access. So with that, we can begin. Okay, once again, as my partner said, we agree that health, access matters, dignity of everyday people, including people, our neighbors, friends and neighbors, and ourselves here in Boston matters. Just a reminder of what the affirmative laid out as the main harm that they're trying to solve here. From HURT 22, they said lower income Bostonians have less access to affordable medications and insurance coverage than wealthy Bostonians, a worthy harm to explore in this debate and one that we agree is a problem. The issue, judges, is that patents, the idea of fast tracking patents is not the answer, and there are two main problems. One is that their plan will actually make health worse. It will make medicines less safe and people less trusting of them. If we look at Lucan 22, which is on page 24, my partner read this. He said, just because drugs are approved more quickly doesn't ensure that they work. And for near and then again on page 25, which is the Darrow and Adib 20, COVID vaccine hesitancy shows that fast tracking can reduce public trust in vaccines, especially when they are developed quickly. This also came up in the Cross-Ex, a question about trust and the way that a public's confidence in something can affect how quickly they access drugs and the public, kind of the public health of that. So that's one problem, is that the fast tracking will actually reduce safety and it will reduce public confidence and therefore reduce public health in that way. The second thing is really around access, and it is an economic argument. The affirmative is saying that fast tracking patents will somehow make drugs more accessible. Our argument is that no, it will not, because the issue is not, in fact, about patents, but about a system of business where drug companies are making more money. And in fact, if you fast track patents, it will lower innovation. It will increase costs because that money will go to the big companies. So it'll be like a monopoly, and they will be developing just a few drugs that make them a lot of money, not the drugs that everyday people need for life-saving drugs, is also just to enhance their health. So if we look at I'm sorry, I'm trying to find it. Mitchell 23 and Amin, that's on page 21. As we read earlier, patent abuse is the cause of unaffordable drug prices for everyday Americans. Making it easier and faster for companies to get more patents would not be good. That's Amin and Mitchell 23. Just as a reminder, today, okay, I'm going to close there.
All right, thank you, Marisa. So again, just for timing's sake here, you can continue to share your strong arguments in the chat that you think strong points Marisa is making. But we're going to flip things over to Josh for the 1AR as soon as he's ready. We don't do cross-ex between the speeches and the rebuttals here, so.
Yeah, I'll be ready.
All right. Take it away,
Normally,
Josh.
debaters, you would take a lot of time here. This is the 1AR, so you would, like, I'm doing this as a brevity thing, but in reality, I would take 4 or 5 minutes of my prep time here to really go through everything that the negative said, find out what I want to say, and address it that way. But since all the speeches are 3 minutes, I'm gonna wing it for today. Wing it, but you know what I mean. I'm gonna do my speech now, and we can talk about the stuff later. All right. In 3, 2, 1. All right. So the night block made a lot of interesting arguments, a lot of them attacking super duper specific parts of our evidence, and also talking about our authors being biased and things like that. Even if you're biased, you could still be right. Like, even if you're biased, even if you're trying to say something, you could still be right. So just because, and they have biased authors too, if I was really going to go into it and look at all their authors and all of their dates, we could do that, but that's not what this is about for me personally. It's about getting into the mechanics and into the evidence and telling the story. All right. So Marisa makes 2 good points. She says that the plan doesn't solve because it makes meds less safe and the people are less trusting of medicines that are fast tracked. Okay, let's talk about that for a second. Initially, that makes a lot of sense, right? Anytime that there's any major change, we haven't used the fast track process in 10 months, and then the COVID vaccine, the COVID virus hits, and then we need to have access to the vaccine safely. First of all, if there were none of those patents 30 years ago in order to make sure that the folks did all the necessary work to have the COVID vaccine out in the first place, then we would be at least 4 years behind on getting the COVID vaccine out. I think after seeing how the COVID vaccine played out, more people would be more willing to accept the fact that, okay, they dealt with this well enough, the vaccine and other drugs is cool. I saw another argument that's like, yeah, you read about the story about the young child with leukemia who died. Yeah, that's extremely tragic. Like that's sad, and there's no way to say that that's not sad. And in reality, like if you have one of those kids, but like 1,000 people get helped by money, by the patents and the stuff that does go through, the fast tracking that does allow people to have access to meds and stuff, then I think that yeah, it sucks, but you got to have to weigh that like thousands of people won from a mishap from fast tracking. Yes, fast tracking isn't perfect. No one is saying that it is 100% flawless. And at the same time, it does put us in a lot of positions, not only for pandemics, but for other medicines and things that we haven't even gotten to talk about. Yes, we were focusing on big companies, but fast tracking really helps a lot of the little companies too, because it doesn't take them as long to like go through patents, which incentivizes them to look for more meds and incentivizes them to put out more solutions. Um, and it happens faster, so other companies and other litigation doesn't get in the way with them going through the patent process. So as far as getting resources out, the fast tracking that would lead to having more medicine come out, would lead to more people having dignity. And as a negative conceded, like if we're about dignity, should we do nothing like a negative suggests? Or should we go with the fast tracking process, where has the potential for a lot of more people to get access to drugs? And the second thing that she says is that the fast track process is down in the public trust. I would like to see more evidence on that. Their latest card was before the pandemic, and the pandemic has come and went, and more people are getting the vaccine to this day. Please vote F. Fast tracking is the way to go, and unless the negative has like thorough reasons why we shouldn't do fast tracking, like it is the end of the world, then we got to go with the upside of the F. Thank you.
All right. Yes, definitely some good advice from Josh there on prep time usage. We would want you to save some for before your rebuttals, but in this case, we're speeding through it a little bit because we flowed these arguments in advance and we knew what the other side was going to say. So we also want to finish in a decent amount of time. So I'm going to turn it over to Rainer, see if you're ready for the last negative rebuttal, the 2NR.
Yeah, I am.
About this.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
All right. So last rebuttal. There are many reasons why I think we won this debate. I could focus on the fact that they dropped a lot of our arguments. They dropped the out cause argument, not really addressing the pharmacy benefit managers. You never even heard the words come out of their mouth. They dropped the solvency turn, essentially saying like this will make it worse. They lose just right on that, right? But I won't do that. I won't focus on those things. Even that alone, those things alone would make sure we win. I'll focus on the fact that just simple question. Would passing their plan make the world a better place? It would not. And do they solve? They do not. Again, I use their own evidence. Don't even take me talking about like there's bias on both sides. You didn't point it out, so they can't consider it. I'm saying I pointed it out, and bias does matter because it tells you the person is motivated, using motivated reasoning to say something that you just came here to repeat as truth. And I use their own evidence to show you that they do not solve. Their own harm card literally talks about the solution being actually addressing the insurance problems, not actually strengthening the patent issue, right? So should we go about doing this? We should go about this. I'm going to do an impact calculus to show you that on every single one of them, we win. Let's start with magnitude. Let's start thinking about like what they're trying to do, right? Like they're trying to develop a more robust system for patents so that drug companies can develop more of a monopoly on drugs and to continue to hike the prices, right? Like what is the scale of that? It means more people are not getting access to drugs. It means the worst part of what they're trying to talk about, which is like increased drug prices where more people are dying. What is the risk of it, right? And then in terms of what they're proposing to do is get rid of the phase 3 part of the process, which again, I've told you from their own evidence that I use from their own solvency card, which says that they want to get rid of the phase 3 part, which is the long-term monitoring, which shows that, hey, even initially you don't have any impact from this drug you're taking, long-term, it could actually deeply harm you. They want to get rid of that. What we're talking about risk here, like that, what does that mean for the world in terms of like also on people's faith in what they are taking from pharmacies? And last part is the time frame. Like how likely are these things, like and how quickly will these things happen, right? And for ours, they are happening now, right? How do we know this? We know based again on their own evidence. It says that pharmacy benefit managers and insurance companies are the reason costs are high. They do not propose anything else. Their own solution is just like, hey, let's just allow them to do this fast. I understand where this is coming from. I understand the urge to do this because of the COVID-19 pandemic. That's the reason. But here's the thing I'm going to ask you. We were able to respond very effectively, even though we do not have the solution that they're proposing, right? The reason for that is because the federal government realized the nature of the issue and says, hey, for this particular case where the circumstances are extraordinary, we're going to provide this, knowing that there are inherent risks involved here. We're not going to continue to make this a complete thing. But again, just a quick recap, they drop a lot of arguments, some of them that are super essential for them to winning. That is the alternative cost and also the fact that solvency turn. They do not address those things. More importantly, the world would be a worse place if we vote for them. So vote for NAG because they would actually destroy the world. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Rainer. Just checking the chat here. Okay, great. Okay. So I'm just going to move right into the last speech in the debate. This is the second affirmative rebuttal. And again, I'm going to try to convince you why the affirmative side should win this debate. And here we go. All right, Judge. So you've heard the negative side in their last speech talk about how we dropped some arguments here. I am going to reference those very briefly here and just say they weren't particularly important. That's why we didn't respond to them. We focused on the things that were most important in this debate, and you're going to be convinced at the end of my speech as to why those things are most important. They did try and talk about how high drug prices were due to other things. We're not worried about high drug prices. We're worried about the atmosphere in the United States that allows for more innovation and creating more life-saving medicines. If you know someone who has a disease right now that has no cure, you know what we're talking about, right? We're trying to find cures for those diseases. We're trying to make the world a healthier place. And the only way that we can convince companies to continue doing that innovation is if they know that their cures and the technology that leads to them is going to be protected. All right, on to the sort of point-by-point refutation here. So I will say that in the card that Rainer keeps referencing about bias and eliminating phase 3. So our side is not advocating for a less safe process. We're advocating for a more complete, quicker process from the government. We want patents to be approved more quickly, and we are acknowledging the government is going to have to spend more resources, money, hire more people to make sure those patents get approved. But we're not saying that they should do a worse process, or we're not saying that drugs that are proven unsafe or technology that is proven to fail should be continued to be used. And they did give an example of a leukemia patient who did have a terminal illness. Unfortunately, that person was going to die in any case, right? So their best chance was to take this potential life-saving medication. Unfortunately, it didn't work, but we do want to create an environment where those new drugs are continued to be produced so that there's a possibility that we could save lives if there's no existing cure for certain diseases. I'm also going to talk about the difference very quickly between FDA approval and patents, because I think that this is a key point, which will convince you to vote for the affirmative. FDA approval is saying whether or not a drug or a medication is safe to use, right? We're talking about patents. Patents are the technology that lead to the creation of these things, right? So we want to protect the process, the technology, the ideas that lead to new medications. We're not saying that we should fast track medications that don't work. If medications are proven to not work, that's fine. We don't want them to be used. But what we do want is the ideas and the technology that lead to them being developed to be better protected. Will this raise the prices of drugs and make it less accessible? We don't think so. We think that this will lead to more drugs being created. And with more drugs, there's more competition, and that will lower the prices and help find better cures. So we're not going to raise drug prices. We are going to create more cures, and more people's lives will be saved by voting for the AF.
Well done.
Congrats, everyone.
Shaking your
All right.
hand means no question. Sorry.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to unspotlight us for a second.
I think it's, yeah. That's a thing of being next to each other.
Yes.
Okay, and I'll give people the ability to unmute themselves now if you'd like. So what we will do is, again, we do have 2 more activities we want to get to in the next 40 minutes. So we're gonna do a very, very short debrief of this debate and allow people to put any comments about what they think the strongest arguments on both sides were now that you've heard the whole debate. And so we'll work on that for the next 3 minutes or so. Share any ideas. If you want to unmute yourself and say, congratulations or a quick thought about your opinion, go ahead. If you want to tell us who you think won, we're tough. We have thick skins, so you can let us know how you really feel. Go ahead. Yes, I'll see if I can do a poll for the winner. Hang on one sec.
The Elliott side thinks the negative one because of their great use of vocabulary. So I think their speaker point should be really high. Also, they really countered all your points, and they did. A key point for me was when you're talking about bias. I think that everyone obviously has implicit bias. Also, they're trying to make an argument. Obviously, they're going to have bias for that side. So that's why I think the negative one.
Thank you for that. Oh, gosh. Can I talk?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, go ahead.
Just want to say thank you for that and great reason for decision. It's very specific. I'll just put up a poll. One of the things we want you all to think about is what the strongest arguments you heard from each side as you think about debating this weekend for high school and next weekend for middle school. Like when you're on the affirmative, when you're on the negative, which are the arguments that you really feel like you want to emphasize? There are a lot of arguments in this case that we did not do at all, that we didn't insert, but they may be arguments that you want to make. So we encourage you to really think about what the strongest ones are.
And it's clear that you guys have been looking at the packet because
right.
you guys were able to ask questions that were literally leading up to things we would be reading later on. So I was just really encouraged to see that you guys had already been digging into the packet like that. That's really encouraging.
I agree.
All right. So it seems like we have a pretty strong answer here. The poll believes that the negative has won this debate. Congratulations to the negative team.
Well done, teams.
And so what we're going to do again,
Congrats.
I'm going to stop the recording for the debate round here.